en el agostadero conocido como Santa Teresa, a los 28 días del mes de abril de 1836, yo, Cayetano López, alcalde y juez de la Villa de Camargo, en nombre del pueblo libre y gobierno de Tamaulipas, y en uso de las facultades que en mí residen y jurisdicción que ejerzo, pongo a usted, don Gregorio Vela, en posesión de 2 sitios de tierra que usted ha comprado.
The year, 1836. These Mexican ranchers no doubt had heard there was a revolution underway in the state of Coahuila y Tejas to the north. But how could they know it would produce a new nation, the Republic of Texas?
Ciudadanos, sean testigos, me ha puesto en posición estos 2 sitios de ganado mayor.
12 years later, another war, the Mexican-American War, would turn those who lived here from citizens of Mexico to citizens of the United States. The pasture was located on the rugged, dry valley between the Rio Grande to the south and to the north, the Nueces. The Spanish had a name for this desolate landscape, Llano Misteño, the Wild Horse Desert. Free-spirited Mustangs and muscular longhorn cattle left by 18th century Spanish settlers were about all that survived here thanks to the blistering sun and lack of water. The native plants and animals got by because they were tough and ornery, prickly on the outside, and if it didn't scratch or sting, it would probably bite you. It was an environment that led one visitor to say that if he owned hell and Texas, he would rent out Texas and live in hell. There was only one thing anyone could imagine this land was good for, and that was raising livestock. The earliest ranches north of the Rio Grande were on large Spanish land grants. By the end of the Civil War, Anglos had replaced many of the descendants of the original Mexican owners. And entrepreneurs such as Mifflin Kennedy and Richard King, who had made their fortunes in the steamboat business on the Rio Grande, were able to buy up vast stretches of open range. But they needed more than money to succeed in this harsh environment.
People like Mifflin Kennedy and Richard King, when they arrived in Texas, they had to learn the cattle industry from the Mexicans who had lived here for 100 years.
Those Mexicans were the Vaqueros, Spanish for cow people, or as we call them today, Cowboys. They knew how to deal with the hot-tempered longhorn bulls, and their knowledge and tools were quickly adapted by Anglos. The Western saddle design is based on the Mexican saddle, with its horn for tying off a lasso, an essential tool for the Vaquero. Anglo cowboys were also quick to adopt the Vaquero's chaps, leg guards, for protection against needle-sharp mesquite brush and cactus.
Mifflin Kennedy had married a Mexican woman, Petra Vela de Vidal, and Petra Vela was well connected, so she was able to provide him with the connections that he needed, the people that he needed to get to know. The Quenedeños, the ranch hands that lived on the ranch and were taken care of by the patrona Petra Vela and by the patron Mifflin Kennedy. He learned to be the patriarch for the ranchers because this is their land and they have that love for the land.
Es cierto que si no fuera, there's no question in my mind that without the skill and the passion and the love that these people showed for livestock and land, ranching as we know it today would not exist in South Texas.
The American tradition of cowboy that we see in movies, Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, all of those stories are based on the real, true cowboy, which is a vaquero.
They had names like Morales, Cuellar, Hernandez, and Gonzalez, among others. For most of the 19th century, they had lived in one-room houses, or jacals, made of mesquite timbers, filled in with mud daub, and roofed over with bundled grass thatch. After the Civil War, they helped teach returning veterans and former slaves how to become cowboys too, as they drove herds of cattle up the Chisholm Trail. Drives would last for weeks until the herds reached railheads in Kansas and later Fort Worth. Eventually, rail lines would reach all the way to South Texas, making the cattle drive obsolete. Otherwise, ranch work remained the same. Each day would start before sunup and often end after sundown, both for the men and the women. And for the kids, playtime meant pretending and practicing to become just like their parents, keepers of the Vaquero tradition.
It is a rite of passage. There is a great deal of pride among the community of the Vaqueros to pass on the knowledge that they have, that it won't be lost. The young boys begin what we call boy jobs. They started at a very early age. Their only goal in life was to become a true and full vaquero.
Everything in their lives, todos in sus vidas, revolved around the care and well-being of the animals. On occasion, young girls would learn to become vaqueras, cowgirls, tagging, vaccinating, and other chores. But it was mainly muchachos jóvenes, young boys who would dream of someday riding like their fathers. And when they were old enough, by 9 or 10, they would join the vaqueros in La Corrida, the cow camp.
Que tenían que cambiar caballos a una locación al otro. The young boys would start off taking care of the horses. They'd move the remuda from one location to the next. Once they developed that skill, then they'd come to the roundup. And they'd sit in the back of the roundup and eat the dust all day. And as they developed their horse skills and their working knowledge, then they moved up to the front edge.
The tradition continues today, passing from father to son, from Jesse Salinas to his son, John Andrew.
My dad's always chased the bulls, and I'm afraid that he might get hit by a bull, horned by a bull.
Yeah, it's real dangerous. If you don't know how to rope, man, you got to be real careful. You can cut off a finger, or you can catch the leg of a horse. You can fall real easy and break a leg. If you're running real hard after a bull and there's a hole in front of you and the horse hits that hole, you're gonna flip over with that horse easy and probably break a neck or something.
The sons of the vaqueros learn early to respect and avoid the dangers of their father's profession by spending their school vacation watching and helping in the cow camps.
And they had a crew of all kids during the summer, 15, 20 kids, and they were all proud kids to be working for the corrida.
Olga Serna's husband, Enamario Serna, was a Quinandeño and a ranch foreman up to his death in 1997. As a young boy, he too had worked hard to earn a job on the ranch and in the process earned a nickname.
Actually, everybody called him Teco. And Morio got that name when he was around 5 years old. He would get on top of a calf and let him go. And he would stick to that calf, and they always would call him Teco. Ticks are usually in the mountains of Mexico where they are Apaches or whatever. They call them Tecos. And so that's how he got his name, Teco.
He started in the old days, when you rounded up by horse. You rounded up in the pasture. You were gone for weeks at a time. He'll even tell us a story of going down the Rio Grande and bringing wild Mexican longhorns up and how that was done.
He was just a cowboy through and through. They worked hard. They left the house at 4 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes they didn't come back till very late in the evening.
You'd typically leave 4:30, 5 in the morning because it was cool, and get to where you were going to be by daylight, or 7 o'clock anyway, and gather cattle all day, or maybe 2 or 3 days, to get enough cattle to make a roundup. And then it'd take you 2 or 3 days to work the cattle, and so you're now from Sunday to Sunday. There wasn't a work week. You started and you worked until you finished.
Even as late as the 1920s, the Quinandeños would camp out under the stars without even a tent, just their sleeping bags. Work camps moved to where the work was. These days, workers commute to work from their homes in pickup trucks and return home long before dark. Meals are still prepared twice a day by El Cocinero del Campo, the camp cook. The menu, basically unchanged in over a century. Pan, los frijoles, y carne de vaca, bread, beans, and beef, served up hot and tasty.
Persona más importante de todos era el cocinero. The most important job was a cocinero. Porque as a cook. He was responsible to make sure the chuck wagon got to where the cow outfit was going to be at lunch, and typically they prepared breakfast, 4:30 in the morning.
After breakfast, the vaqueros would get their work assignments from men like Teco Serna. He was a caporal.
The caporal was the captain. He was a quarterback. He was the one that gave the daily orders on where they were going to work, what they were going to do for the day.
If the crews had to split up, the number 2 man, the segundo, would take one group and the caporal the other. Of course, they would need horses to go anywhere, and the job of making sure the horses were ready to go fell to the remudero, generally considered the second most important job on the ranch. But there was more to vaquero life than work. Fiestas marked special occasions, celebrating weddings, christenings, and anniversaries, most especially a 50th wedding anniversary. Major fiestas centered around religious holidays and were held in churches, but for the rest of the year, religion in the vaquero's home was the province of wives and mothers.
The women took care of the religion mostly, and many of those women had altars in their homes. They would teach the children the religious heritage, and they would say the rosary, and they would say all of these lessons that they were to learn as children. But when the men are gone, she also becomes the doctor, the nurse, the disciplinarian, everything.
Now, thanks to improved ranching practices and technology, husbands and fathers can be home almost every night, and in plenty of time to help with raising a family. Men like Teco Serna.
I'm proud of what he did because he worked so hard to be with his kids. The minute he got home, he was ready to go work with his kids at the school FFA farm.
Today, his sons Luis and Felix are themselves vaqueros, joining the ranks of those who proudly worked alongside their father, vaqueros like Jose Salazar.
Bastante tiempo sí tengo desde que estuve trabajando aquí hasta ahorita.
I've been working here most of my life.
Son más viejos que yo, los corrales.
Los corrales, the corrals are older than I am.
A José lo conocí hace muchos años
I've known Jose for a long time. We used to drive up the cattle from the coast up towards this main ranch headquarters here and load them up on the train.
He's a very proud person, and he doesn't want anybody to say he's a weakling, even though he's old and sometimes it's hard for him to walk and things, but he has never given up. And if he gives up, he's going to die.
Many vaqueros who rode with Jose Salazar and Teco Serna and others before them are buried in Campo Santos, the Cowboys cemetery, located on the grounds of La Parra, the old Kennedy ranch house and headquarters.
Jose Maria Gutierrez, he was a cook, he's dead. Amado Guevara, he was a cowboy, he's dead. Jose Guevara, he's dead. Oh God, there's so many.
Theirs is a roll call of pride and accomplishment in building the successes of ranching in South Texas and throughout the West.
Lloviendo, tronando, vamos a calar y ahora no, ahora andas en aeroplano.
Back in the old days, it would be on horseback.
Ya no necesitas caballos. Ya más que no necesitas caballos.
And whether it be rain, shine, sleet, or snow, we had to be out there working. Today, now they use airplanes, helicopters to work cattle.
So roundups that used to take weeks now take only a few hours. But the work of the vaquero remains pretty much the same as it has for a century. There is no way to replace the human being in the saddle or in the pens working with the animals. Because of technology, there may be fewer jobs, but there will always be a need for the skills and dedication of the vaquero. Always a need for another generation willing to learn how to become a cowboy.
All of these things were taught by the father, knowing that the son was going to take over in his place.
It's just generations. Like my son, well, there's gonna start a new generation after we get old. People will say, "You're a cowboy, wow, do you really rope bulls? Do you really do this? Do you really do that?" Yeah, we do that.